Hi, everybody. I'm Canon Martin Green, and this week I'm taking over the Dean's Letter slot while she's away to talk to you a little bit about the music program. Specifically, this time we're going to talk a little bit about the Organ Scholar program and how that has developed over the years. A question that I get sometimes is, what is an organ scholar and what do they do? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. In its simplest form, the organ scholar is a student. It's really an apprenticeship where you're learning all the hands-on personal experience stuff that you can't really learn in a lesson or in school, that real life accompanying a choir in rehearsals and services, playing rep, learning massive stacks of music quickly to play for various services and all that kind of stuff, can really only can be done in that real world experience that way. It's hard to do in a classroom setting. Today, we're going to bring with us one of our past organ scholars, Nicholas Halbert. We have brought on a new organ scholar just this year, Jesse Puglia, a really enthusiastic young student, but he was unable to join us for this little chat today. We'll have him on another time. And as you do come back into the cathedral, please be sure to say hi to him and introduce yourselves. He's very anxious to meet everyone. Nicholas was with us for a number of years before him, and we're going to bring him up on screen here, and we'll introduce him. Hi, Nicholas.
All right, hello.
So can you tell us a little bit about where you are now and then your time as organ scholar here at St. Paul's and how that all fits together?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll start with I joined the voice choir, I think in third grade, sounds about right. And that, like when you're singing the soprano line and you're staring up at this huge instrument, it's only a matter of time before you start to say, when can I play that? When can I play that? So I started organ lessons in seventh grade. And I would say like that was when music went from being like, a back burner kind of hobby to like, whoa, this is probably what I'm going to do. I was not a good piano student. I think I made it to like Faber level 4 if you have kids taking piano lessons right now, so you know about where that is. And as soon as I hit the organ, it was like, oh man, like I just want to practice all day. That's all I want to do. Well, all day for a seventh grader, which is about like an hour and a half, and you're
still quite a
whoa.
bit. Yeah, and I remember watching you really start to take off there when we started lessons. That was always an enjoyable.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad it's not just my imagination. Good. So then it was at 16, so 2011, that I became the organ scholar. And I was the organ scholar for my last 2 years of high school. And at that time, we were between having associate organists. So I was the accompanist with some exceptions, obviously. Sometimes we'd call in old help for like some big anthems and stuff, especially at first. And I did most of the hymn playing at evensong. At Mass, I remember you did, I think probably more like 70-30 there. And then voluntaries. And that was, as you said, it's a lot of voluntaries to play. And especially with such a, the cathedral's a great congregation. And so, you can't just play easy stuff either, because they know what music, they know good music, and they want to hear it every week. And which is something I appreciate so much about having been at St. Paul's and having studied with you. So going from there, I left, I went to Eastman, and I guess that was following in the footsteps of Chris Putnam, I believe.
Oh, Eastman was John Bodinger.
John Bodinger, that's right.
Another organ scholar from a long time back, and my first organ teacher.
And I thought, well, what for me was so cool is that when I went to these auditions, I especially remember at the Eastman one, the head of the faculty was like, oh, you work at St. Paul, San Diego. We had John Bodinger here 10 years ago.
And they had their shrine and temple to him set up, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they were like, oh, and of course, Edgar Billups was there for a long time too, and that was a moment when it kind of hit me like, oh, I guess being this organ scholar, this is, I didn't realize, but that is your first step into this network of musicians that exists, this network of organists. So yeah, that's one
step
thing.
And also a huge step.
It's a huge step. Yeah, you're right. And I guess I'm cutting to the chase here, but that is now we'll get to the musical things, but certainly that first step into your first professional job and having an opportunity like this is certainly life-changing, no doubt. I went to Eastman for 4 years in my bachelor's. I went to Dallas and I did a master's and a performance diploma. And I decided I hadn't had enough. So I came to do my doctorate here at ASU, where I'm the teaching assistant for Professor Kimberly Marshall. And it's delightful to be back in the Southwest, back in like warmish weather. It's going to be miserable here once summer comes back though. But so that's kind of, okay, that's the biography.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So if we can to really talk about more about the St. Paul's Organ Scholar program more specifically, can you remember and maybe tell people like something like, what was it like for you the very first time that you played a piece, whatever it was? I don't remember if it was an accompaniment or a hymn or voluntary, but the first time you played the organ for us in public at the cathedral, what was going through your mind? Like, well, how was that?
I played the first piece ever was a prelude at Evensong, and I played a little piece in C major by César Franck, and just abject terror.
Sure, terror. Yeah, everyone remembers the pieces they played, and it's usually terror is the.
I mean, like, talk about a jump. Like, I think basically my public performance experience as a keyboardist up until that moment was literally playing in like student piano recitals once a year. And suddenly, like, now I'm playing, at a worship service. Like, this is the real deal. This isn't like, and there's that thing I knew, like, because you taught us, like, basically from the minute we get there as choristers, the lesson is like, once you put on the robe, like, you're still a kid, but you're not just a kid anymore. You're a professional. And what you're doing in this worship service needs to be reverent, and it needs to be excellent, because of the service you're offering, both to aid the congregation in worship and the service to God. And so, of course, talk about a jump, going from playing like, a little like minuet or something at a piano recital to playing even the small little voluntary. Then after that, I remember, I think I played a hymn like a month later, and that was also, unbelievably scary. And then
probably in a different way though, and for different reasons.
Yeah, because and it's the same thing with the first time I accompanied an anthem, because when you play a solo, you at least know, if I get off by a beat, it's not that big a deal. But then, of course, when you're playing an anthem or a hymn, you have to keep time. You got to be with everyone, and now your job has become even a little bit more important because you're helping other people perform their role in the service.
Yeah, and accompanying, I've always found accompanying a choir, from the organ is kind of a unique experience, because you're not only part of an ensemble doing that, but you're also in a leadership role. But you're also not the leader because someone else is conducting. So you kind of have to walk the line back and forth between these, I'm an ensemble player and I'm also leading, and you have to constantly shift back and forth. And it's really a fine art to learn. It takes forever.
Yeah, cause I was gonna say, I remember you talking about like these things like 15 years ago, like, you need to follow the choir, but with a small time delay. You need to push them a little, but not too far. And I just kind of nodded my head. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. And now, like 15 years later, I finally am starting to like get that intuitive grasp for what that actually means, and it's like, I think that happens with everyone. Like, people tell you wise things, and then there's the nice delay until they actually make sense.
And it takes that real world experience that I was talking about in the introduction so much. It's just a matter of amassing enough of that it starts to become second nature. Yeah,
the real world experience is so vital. You can't learn how to accompany a congregation in a vacuum. You can't learn how to accompany a choir without a choir. And then there's all these little things too, like knowing, this hymn is appropriate as a processional, but not as a communion hymn, and all these things where it's like, you don't even realize this immense amount of knowledge you're absorbing, but it's all there when you need it later.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, well, good. That's the goal. There's just so much to just kind of
Oh
dump
yeah.
on everyone and you soak it all
Yeah.
up, and you take little various bits and pieces away from each service, and it
Yeah.
all builds up into the
Absolutely.
career. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think we all have. I know I do, but we're not here to talk about me right now. But do you remember maybe one of the more funnier things that went wrong, or a moment that
Yeah.
we all have when when something goes awry, or something just totally
Yeah.
out
I
of the
mean,
blue happens you're not expecting, and how do
yeah,
you
there's
do
there's
how do you appreciate that and still keep playing or doing what you're doing and keep your composure?
I was thinking about this. I was like, man, what are some things? I can only think of one truly disastrous occurrence. And it was fortunate, and I don't remember it with regret because it like saved my page turner kind of saved me. You'll hear the story now. So it was when the girls were doing Mendelssohn, Hear My Prayer. And I had a friend of the cathedral, someone who's come to Evensons for years, Joe Rodriguez, a bell choir director, was turning my pages for me, and he's an organist too, and so he's turning my pages, and the organ score, had a loose a folio, a loose leaf in the middle, like the center two pages were loose, and as after the rehearsal, I had taken those pages had like come out during rehearsal, and I'd set them aside. And so they were sitting like, I can't remember exactly. I think they were tucked in the back of the book or something, but they were nearby. So we turn the page, and it's time for the recitative, and I don't have any music. And like, of course, the recitative, like, what am I gonna do? Like, there's like 20 chords on the page that are all different. It's not like I can just fake it either, like, unless I had a great memory. So I just like I think I like looked over at you. I was like, oh, and of course, like,
Which is very confidence inspiring as the
yeah,
conductor.
conductors love to see
Okay,
that.
looking over and seeing seeing that is
Well, this was in my second year, so at least I was like somewhat comfortable. I mean, I can't imagine if I was like a month in and this happened, would have been very different.
yeah.
But at this point, like, I knew that once we got to the next page, the chorus, I was fine. So I was pretty resigned to like this recitative is just going to be unaccompanied. And meanwhile, poor Joe has not resigned himself to this, and he is frantically searching through the book, all over the console, trying to find these pieces of paper. And he manages to find them like right in time for after the soprano saying like the last two notes, and I had to play the little interlude.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect timing. And I mean, almost the congregation wouldn't have known it happened, other than that
Well,
it
the
seemed
secret's
weird
out
that there
now.
was
Yeah.
an extensive solo. Yeah, exactly. It's been long enough. But that's probably the funniest thing. And it's only funny because we got out of it, you know.
Yeah.
It
But those are
would
all
have been
learning experiences, right? Definitely.
oh
Usually
yeah.
we learn exactly what not to do the next time, which
Yeah.
is very
And
important
also, like,
lesson.
you hope that that won't happen again, but invariably it will at some point in your life. And it's one of those things, like, once you know you've made that mistake, you can get out of it. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Hopefully, I've had that happen to me. I don't think I've had it happen in a performance again, but I've had a few rehearsals where, like, you're
Oh,
frantically
yeah.
scrambling, but
We've all had
we're
those. I
fine.
mean, it's live. It's live music,
Yeah.
it's live production, so there are invariably things that go wrong. But as
Yeah.
a
And that,
student, learning the skill of how do I get out of this, or how to recover from it,
and
that's a
I
really
would
important skill to
say,
learn.
yeah, I had this is actually, it's funny because I think this is one of the other big takeaways from the experience. It's like, you know, when like with me starting at 16, like, there were still a lot of things I needed to learn while I was doing it. Still a lot of mistakes that I had to make in the process of doing it. And I think that helped leave me far more ready to go to school afterwards, because I had had the experience of making big mistakes in public environments, and that leaves you. Then it's like, at that point, I'd like to think I was somewhat like prepared. Like, when I go to studio class, like, I might make a few huge mistakes, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be. And that it builds that ability to get through it and to get out the other side of it. And of course, I thought that was super helpful too, and kind of learning that even in a professional environment, like, music's hard. People are gonna make mistakes, and it's like the important thing is learning how to get out of them and how to carry yourself with some dignity afterwards.
True. True.
you know,
Yeah, even
uh,
though we don't feel like it.
so
I know for me, even when my development as a student, every these bigger mistakes, obvious ones that we're talking about, every one of those,
yeah,
I think, taught me so much more than any lesson or even months worth of lessons.
yeah,
You learn so much from those experiences,
yeah,
especially, oh, I made a
totally.
mistake in public. How do I not do that again?
Exactly. Yeah. It seems like dwelling on the negative, but really, I mean, you got to take those negative experiences and flip them into learning experiences. And even that positive experience of saying, okay, well, that happened, but I got out of it. So I know
Mhm.
that next time if something that crazy happens, I know I can get out of it. It's going to be
Yeah.
fine. And that's a hard lesson to learn and a very, very important one, you know.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you too, since you have kind of a unique perspective, since you grew up at St. Paul's, sang, did the Organ Scholar program, went off to schools, if you told us, but you're still kind of more in academic life than just church. You're not doing
Mhm,
just church work. Um, so from your perspective, what would you say to someone who's maybe considering doing this,
mhm.
thinking about,
Oh,
maybe as a high schooler or,
yeah.
freshman in college? Oh, I might want to become an organ scholar. What advice would you give them?
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I'd say wholeheartedly, yeah, you should be doing this, because it gets you the kind of liturgical training that you need if you're going to have a career. And frankly, I mean, even people who want to go into academia, um, we all kind of have to accept that, like, in all likelihood, that will be academia plus continued church work. Um, so knowing that, you want to have those skills, and that you're right, you need that real life experience of doing all these things, of going through, you really need to go through a church year multiple times to really understand the seasons. And I mean, every single church year I learned something new that I should have known before about, like, oh, that you need to do this on this day or that on this day, or I'll learn about some new kind of esoteric feast or something. And different churches have different practices, and the more exposure you can have will help. um, I have worked almost exclusively in Episcopal and Catholic parishes, and of course this training has helped immensely with being able to just kind of walk into those positions and already feel very comfortable with what's going on. The other big thing I'd say is, like, for a student, if I ever had a student who was, oh, I want to just play I just want to play the music. I don't want to do the church stuff. I'd say, well, the amount the church music and the understanding, especially of the church year, informs the way you play the music is unreal. Working in a place like St. Paul's, I absorbed the Lutheran hymnody that I would need to play Bach chorale preludes. I absorbed the chant that I would need to understand, well, basically all the music, all music history. And that's the other thing. And you can't, it's one thing to read in a textbook, oh, this chant is sung on the second Sunday of Advent. Yeah,
Yeah, but then
but to
actually
actually
experiencing it
do it, yeah,
and doing
and
it.
to
Yeah.
connect it with, like, with all the little things that connects with, like, it just, what are the readings that day, what other types of hymns are being sung, what other kind of music, what's the preaching going to be about, all of those things, come back together, because almost all organ music is liturgical. And
Yeah.
that's
And
so,
it's so much more, even as a young student, it's so much more than just learning, as difficult and technical as it is, so much more than just learning how to play the organ in a
oh yeah,
program like this. You're learning, like you said, so much more about the
yeah,
church and liturgical
yeah,
construction and choir rehearsals and rehearsal techniques and all, and so on
yeah,
and
I
so
mean,
on. Yeah.
playing
And
the
that's
organ
why this
is like,
program is so near and dear to me. I mean,
yeah,
I think just gives people a wealth of information and opportunity, is
yeah,
that, like you said, that giant first stepping stone to go
yeah,
off either, to do more education or to go off and do a different church job or go off and do wonderful things.
Yeah. And of course, if you're going into education, you're going to be training church organists. So you should know all this stuff.
Definitely.
And yeah, and especially it really is with really liturgical churches like the Episcopal Church and the Catholics and Lutherans, especially. This is the kind of, you can't just absorb this stuff in a week while you're drawing up your music schedule. You really do need to spend years just kind of like figuring out how's this all work? There's this huge repertoire of organ music and choral music, and organ scholar programs like this just give you that wealth of knowledge where you'll be super well prepared by the time you get out into the field.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that it still serves you well even after this amount of time.
No doubt.
How much further you've gone. That's really fantastic. That's exactly the whole point of the whole program. So that's really satisfying to hear.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
It's incredibly influential. Absolutely.
And thank you, Nicholas, for being here for part of this chat. And hopefully this has helped enlighten people a bit about the Organ Scholar program. People with questions, you can always contact me. We'll talk about it more. And like every good program in an Episcopal church, we have a fund, the Organ Scholar Fund. If you find this to be near and dear to your heart or wanting to help foster education for young organists, there is a fund you can contribute to, and I'd be more than happy to share all that information with you. Nicholas, do you have any parting words of wisdom for us before we sign off? Hopefully we'll see you out in San Diego sometime fairly soon.
Oh yeah, I know.
Recital.
I gotta come play a recital. I really need to. No, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add is just that like a program like this is life-changing. And these positions are going to keep opening up. We need more organists and music directors who have training like this. And it's, I think when you talk about like a fund, it's important to remember that the organ scholar, yes, is contributing to the church that you're at in the present, but also that you're kind of paying it down the line, and that, the Episcopal or Catholic or whatever church is going to benefit for decades because of an organ scholar program like this. And that's probably the most amazing thing of all about it.
Oh, that's an excellent point, and thank you for that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was always good to talk to you, and we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Nicholas. And as I said, any questions from people in the congregation, feel free to contact me anytime, and I'll speak to you in excruciating detail, if you like, about anything to do with the music department. Thank you again from myself, Martin Green, Canon for Music. See you soon.